Hello, podcasties. How you guys doing? Tonight, I'm going to show you the 5 phases of how your mental health can break down postpartum. Or you could also say how your nervous system gets more and more activated and dysregulated postpartum. And this is really, really important because you need to know where you're at and how bad it is for you. Sometimes when you're in it, you can't see it. And that's actually one of the most dangerous and honestly perpetuating aspects of depression or anxiety postpartum is that you don't know that you're in it. So then you can't do anything about it. So this will help you figure out exactly where you are on the spectrum of mental health breakdown. I am not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. I'm a life coach. This is from my own experience. I've created these from witnessing clients. Okay. And so take them for what they are. Let's get started.
Welcome to the Postpartum Coach podcast, where we embrace our needs as moms, we learn to lead ourselves first, then our families, and where we create our own healing from the inside out to find our way to the work we were meant to do in this world. I'm your host, a fellow mom of 3 and a certified life coach, Lizzie Langston.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Postpartum Coach podcast. I am really, really passionate about what I'm going to tell you today. I have a client who just finished coaching with me. She's doing great. She's in Singapore. Someone she knows through a friend, another mom, her and her 3-week-old. For the sake of not triggering anyone, we're going to say they didn't survive postpartum, okay? And what I want you guys to know is when I hear stories such as this, I get extremely passionate about empowering women to know that they can help themselves more, they can prepare better, and the system isn't doing a great job in general. There's so many people that are freelancers like myself that are trying, and we're all, trying to get covered by insurance, and gratefully so much more insurance nowadays is covering mental health for postpartum women better and better, especially post-pandemic. So you guys talk to your insurance companies, see if they'll cover private coaching or, whatever the help is that you're getting, talk to them. And also if they don't, that doesn't mean that you can't get the help that you want. Okay. Because you do get what you pay for so many times. Now I digress. I heard this news and at first I just avoided it because I always feel really upset by that because that could have been me. It could have been any one of us. And then I realized that I need to talk more about the low lows. And so on this podcast, I do have an episode that's like one of the first 3 or 5 episodes, and it does talk about the baby blues versus postpartum depression versus postpartum psychosis. And I'm not a doctor and I'm not a therapist, and I mostly have created my stuff from my life coaching certification and my own experience. I have a lot of mentorship capability because I've lived through it, and I do have a lot of professional acumen, and I do have a lot of wisdom because I just do. But I want you to know that you always need to be talking to your healthcare provider about these things, and you don't need to feel shame about also looking into, antidepressants, for example, or something like that. I want you to just know that. That's really important to me because mental health can be really serious. It can be really, really serious. And I don't know that I say that enough on this podcast. And I don't help people who are suicidal. And that doesn't mean I dismiss them and shame them and I judge them in some way. I'm just not qualified to help you if that's you. I love Postpartum Support International. If you're feeling suicidal, if you're struggling with intrusive thoughts in the middle of the night and you're scared, Postpartum Support International has chapters, I think, in every state in the US. And you can also look up suicide hotlines, like suicide prevention hotlines to talk to somebody. I think there's an episode on this podcast also. I will try and link it in the show notes that does touch on, it's actually all about if you're feeling suicidal, steps to go through and stuff. But I just want to remind you that I'm not a medical provider. So in this episode though, there's 2 main points I want you to know. Number 1 is a lot of times we have mental health diagnoses, right? Antenatal anxiety. We have postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, whatever, postpartum psychosis. And I'm not going to say that there aren't medical factors involved and that there aren't exceptions to what I'm about to say. So I want you to know that we need to all be nuanced. There could be exceptions to this. But what I will say is that a lot of women and their mothers and mother-in-laws and grandmothers talk about mental health postpartum as if it just occurs and happens. Everybody does. Actually, it pisses me off. Like doctors do too. As if it's just a diagnosis that you just pull out of your butt. Like one day you woke up and you were depressed. And there are times like that. But this is literally my handwriting. Isn't it pretty? These 5 phases that I'm going to read to you and go through today are more like checkpoints that you can see along the way so that you can be aware and get help before you get into the place where you can't even help yourself. So let me share with you my story really briefly. I had 4 kids. I just had my 4th this last year. So I had really bad mental health crises after some intense birth trauma where I almost died. So after my 2nd and 3rd baby, I had extreme PTSD that I didn't know that was PTSD. And then I had anxiety and depression, didn't know they were anxiety and depression. I just knew that I wasn't happy and I wasn't functioning. And I was not feeling like being around friends and I didn't feel like eating. You know, I just thought that was postpartum. I didn't realize that that was depression. So that's the second thing I want to talk to you about with these 5 phases is that you need these phases because when you're in it, you don't know that you're in it. Also, have your partner or your mom or mother-in-law listen to these phases. But nobody better than you, but also have them listen so that people around you can know what to look for when your mental health declines. Anyway, my story's on this podcast a lot, but basically I struggled with mental health really bad and I've been in the low of lows. And then when I found coaching after I tried antidepressants, which did work to a degree, and I tried therapy, which worked to a degree, and then I found coaching, and maybe it was the fact that I found all of them, I don't know, but coaching for me just lit me up. I felt like I had a way out. So I'm not telling people not to try other things, but I haven't been the same person since, and I just dove headfirst into the mental health world and have then since done a lot of healing. And so I know some stuff. So let's talk about it. Phase 1. Okay, this is not bad at all, practically normal. Phase 1 of your mental health. But it is the first phase of decline. Okay, so there are some not desirable things on here. You're getting low sleep. And when I say low sleep, I have a whole episode on sleep. It's just only like 10 back from this one. But when I say low sleep, I'm talking about 6.5 hours or less in a 24-hour period, a 24-hour cycle, postpartum. I know you guys, we think we can be heroes and get like 5 hours of sleep and be okay. And if you're in your early 20s, you might get away with it. And if you didn't have a C-section, you might get away with it. But if you are past 30 and you had a C-section or any sort of birth complications, like you need it 7.5 hours per 24 hours. And you can do it. Don't tell me you can't do it. You can. You just have to ask for help. You have to really treat it like it's a medical prevention thing because it totally is. Okay. Anyway, I could talk about, sleep. You gotta get sleep, girl. So low sleep, phase 1, you are in survival mode, but you're happy. You're doing very little, but from a self-aware, restful place. So you are not like doing little because you're depressive. You're like just trying to slow down and do less because you're postpartum. When it's time to sleep, you sleep easily and you sleep hard. You might even advocate for your need to get more sleep. You're watchful of baby, but calm and enjoying. And you have a low sense of self, but you're okay with it. You're happy to focus on the baby. When I say you have a low sense of self, it means you've kind of lost yourself in the postpartum rigmarole. Your hygiene's probably not great, but you're okay with it. So I would say this is like just not too declined. I mean, low sleep is a risk factor for mental health stuff, but that's pretty much normal, okay? Now listen to phase 2. This is probably a lot of you. Phase 2 and 3 will probably be most of you. Low to moderate sleep, like low sleep. Yeah. Your mind seems foggy, but you're still okay at functioning. But you might be losing track of things, forgetting things. You might need to ask people to repeat themselves. A lot of that can literally just be low sleep deprivation. But like I said, low sleep is going to be a risk factor. It leaves you vulnerable. You might get more irritable in phase 2 than in phase 1. Might be more irritable, might be more anxious more often. And you start to really worry a lot about the safety of baby, about you. Maybe you have really health-related anxiety. You worry about or imagine the baby dying or getting really sick, and it kind of bothers you and keeps you up a little bit, helps you not relax, keeps you from relaxing. Sometimes you struggle falling asleep. So you don't fall asleep instantly and sleep hard like in phase 1. Sometimes you struggle to fall asleep. It takes you longer than you'd like more than 20 minutes, and you're missing out on sleep. You have low libido, but it's there sometimes. Libido is sex drive, for those who don't know. So you have low libido, but it's there sometimes. And by the way, if you're in the first 6 weeks or even the first 3 months, you're going to have low libido, probably just hormonally. Don't worry about that. But yeah, just in general, if you'd like it to be there, but it's kind of just not really there as much as you'd like it to be. This is phase 2. Sometimes you have scary daydreams or thoughts, and you get overwhelmed frequently, and you're definitely not thinking of your own needs. Like you keep forgetting to eat. Once in a while forgetting to eat, totally normal. You've got a lot going on, you're adapting. But to the point where maybe your breast milk is really, really waning and you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't eaten in 6 hours, or you don't book the appointment for yourself. This is just the beginning of the declining of your executive functioning or your ability to take care of yourself and run the schedule and all the things. Okay, so that's phase 2. Phase 3, you are often very overwhelmed. This kind of reminds me, these phases kind of remind me of what's the name of that test that you take in your OBGYN's office, the mental health thingy-majig that I think is pretty not good. I'm pretty sure I've lied through that thing. So you're often very overwhelmed. You recognize yourself less and less. Noticing irregular behaviors or pattern of thought. So you're starting to do things that you don't normally do. Like maybe you get really obsessive about how often you clean the baby's changing station, or maybe you are yelling or being really irritable towards your partner and picking fights. And also your patterns of thought are kind of, they can either be on hyperdrive, hypervigilant. You can just be paranoid. You could also just be so worried that it's like when you say it to somebody out loud, they're like, no, I didn't think about that. You're kind of just starting to get into your own world, detaching from reality a little bit more. Things that used to feel easy feel hard. So just doing the basics feels like really paralyzing and overwhelming. Basics for you, basics for baby. Now, I want to stop here and say, have compassion on yourself. Don't, if you're like, oh my gosh, I'm in phase 3, that doesn't mean anything about you other than, oh, this is good that I'm listening to this episode so I can take some action and rearrange some priorities so I can get the sleep I need, or so that I can start eating better. Like this is your wake up call to focus on it. But if you try to wake yourself up and focus on it, not physically wake up, right? But if you try after you listen to this episode to go and make some changes and then you're not able to, that's when you might need some professional support for your mental health, okay? So things that used to feel easy feel hard. You are discouraged. You are you're starting to get concerned about yourself. You're either completely not thinking about yourself, or if or when you do think about yourself, you're starting to get a little bit discouraged. Let's see. You are concerned, about yourself. You could have trouble falling asleep, low quality sleep. Listen, the quality of your sleep is so important. And when your nervous system, which is the system in your body that decides if you're getting worked up or calming down, if you are on the defense or if you are resting and replenishing. And if your nervous system is getting really, really activated because you're not feeling safe, you're not feeling taken care of, you're feeling overstimulated and overwhelmed, not only is it going to be hard to fall asleep, but then the sleep that you do get can be really low quality. Not because baby's waking up, but because you're just in a shallow state of sleeping because you're just jumpy. You just feel unsafe. Sorry if I scared you. So that is a reason for concern, because that can be a cycle that can just get worse and worse and worse. And so you need to figure out where you can intervene and break the cycle. And that's literally what I help women do. I would say if you're past phase 3 or phase 4, you might want to look at getting local help where you can be more accountable, maybe walk into their office and they can physically evaluate you. Therapists are part of the medical leg of the medical world, whereas as a life coach, I'm not. And so I want to work with women who are pretty confident that they can get themselves through this, and that just with some coaching and some addressing some certain little things and making some tweaks and some mommy mentoring that I give them, they're going to be happy on their way. You know, and I am trauma informed, so I can hold space for big emotions that have been stored in your body for years and stuff like that. But I don't help women who are dealing with, for example, suicidal thoughts, specifically ideation and planning. So I wouldn't feel qualified. And if that's you, my heart definitely goes out to you. I've been there, scary enough to say it. I have. And I do have some self-serve online courses. So if you're not sure where in these phases you are and you're trying to figure that out even more than this episode, if you go to LizzieLangston.com/work with me, and for those who are listening to this live, that page isn't quite ready yet. But for those who are hearing this, a couple weeks after it's dropped, it should be ready. But go to the LizzieLangston.com/work with me page, or you can just go to my homepage, LizzieLangston.com. And you'll be able to take a look at more of my resources. You definitely want to get on my email list, you guys, because I have some new stuff that I'm dropping that's coming out for you. I was just postpartum this past summer. I have a very fresh and clear idea of what would be helpful to you and what you need. And I've been cooking it up over here behind the scenes with my team. I'm very proud, might I say. And it's going to be some free stuff and also some lower priced stuff. And so you can also just go see what's there that calls to you as well. Okay, that's just LizzieLangston.com. Get a freebie and you'll have access to all that. So, could have trouble falling asleep, low quality sleep. You forget your self-care almost completely. And this is a new part, is when things start to slide a little deeper mental health wise, you can get resentful towards your partner and or your baby. Now, resentment towards your partner can happen even with no real mental health issues. So it can happen in phase 1 and 2. But in phase 3, resentment, let's just speak on this really quick. Resentment tells you that there's a need that you have that's not being met, whether that's because you are not meeting it and you could meet it, or it's because you need somebody else to meet it, or you believe someone else should meet it. Whatever the reason is and whoever you think is responsible, the point is you have a need, it's not being met. Resentment comes from that. So that would be what you need to look into, is what's the need and what, who is supposed to be meeting it. I like to believe you are, but if you think or that your partner needs to help you do it, how can you communicate? How can you advocate? How can you get that help? And if they're not available, how can you get it from someone else? Okay, so that was phase 3. So just kind of some bullet points. Very often overwhelmed. You recognize yourself less and less. I don't think I read that one. But you start to feel not like yourself to a point that's pretty noticeable. Like I said, you're kind of starting to get concerned about yourself. But the problem is sometimes we're in such survival mode that you're not aware. And so this is why I want you guys to share this stuff with your partner too. But hopefully this episode can make you aware. Okay, phase 4, you may have intrusive thoughts. Okay, so phase 4, when you start getting into intrusive thoughts, you might be sliding from a 3 to a 4, or you might be in a phase 4. And again, I want to remind you, I made these phases up, okay? When you hear them and you're like, oh no, phase 4, I don't want you to, this isn't to scare you and to make you nervous. However, I would like that it gets your attention and kind of kicks your mental health up to the number one priority place. Did you know? I cannot tell you where I heard this, but I did hear it from a reputable source when I was postpartum. Oh, it was from my pediatrician, and she always quotes research. Actually, she's a nurse practitioner, but she acts as our pediatrician. She was coming to our home. She was amazing. A to Z Home Pediatrics. I think Holistic Home Pediatrics. That was her company's name. We used them when baby Ren was born because I had just had a C-section and I'm 35 and I did not want to be going around just walking into doctor's offices with a C-section. No, heck no. So we had her come to our home. Anyway, and I remember her saying that the mom's mental health is actually the number one predictor of the baby's adjustment. So obviously the baby needs to eat, the baby needs to sleep. But if you're like losing your mind over, should I breastfeed? Should I bottle feed? Whatever serves your mental health, and then move forward, because your mental health is more important than anything else. That doesn't mean there aren't other things that are important. And I'm not anti-breastfeeding when I say that. But mom's mental health is actually the number one predictor of babies and children's adjustment. Okay, so let's go back to phase 4. May have intrusive thoughts starting to come in. And I have had people work with me who have struggled with intrusive thoughts, and I have a whole episode on those, and I can help you understand why they're happening. They can be so scary. I'm so sorry if they are. Intrusive thoughts, by the way, are just really like aggressive or violent or scary. They can even be kind of paranoid. Usually they happen for me in the middle of the night, like that 2 to 3 a.m. window. If I am feeding the baby in the middle of the night like that and I'm all by myself, that's when I'm the most vulnerable if I haven't gotten all the sleep that I need to. So especially my postpartum doula, I hired a postpartum doula through Cherry Blossom Doula Services here in Arizona. Her name was Marlene. She was really good. And she said 6.5 hours or less is when they start to notice more women struggling with intrusive thoughts. So good sleep can save you so good postpartum. Like, just get sleep. It is so much more important than I think. I don't know who sent the memo that all the moms need to do all of the baby caretaking by themselves postpartum. Like somehow they're supposed to be able to do that. Like, oh, because you're a mom now. So yeah, you're going to just not get a lot of sleep for a long time. Like, say goodbye to that sleep. Can we stop that culture? We are normalizing the very thing that takes women down. You know, this mom in Singapore that did not survive postpartum, was she drinking that Kool-Aid? Was she thinking that she needed to stay home? I mean, I hate to like go to the extreme examples, but we do not want to be normalizing this idea that women are somehow supposed to overcome low sleep. Moms are humans. I don't care how big your love and desire to serve your baby is postpartum, you're still a human. You have needs and limitations. You have to have 6.5 or more. For me, being a little older with this 4th baby and having a C-section, I did not function well if I didn't have 8 hours. And that was my minimum. 8 hours when I had just had a C-section and I was still pumping breast milk felt like 5 or 6 hours. So, you know, we need to be careful with the sleep thing. I have to say that. It is so important. Okay. Here we go. 3rd time's a charm. Let's go back. So phase 4 may have intrusive thoughts, but are you willing, you're maybe still have the space to be aware, and maybe you're like, okay, you can still go get help. Maybe you're looking at this podcast and you're like, still, you have a little bit more space. You're not completely like frozen down the drain. You feel overwhelmed. You start to maybe be pessimistic and negative. So you're past just resentment where you can still function, but you're kind of bitter. This is like, you're kind of toxic. You're getting to that point. You compare yourself to others. You feel a deep sense of shame that you might not be doing a good enough job. Now, you can feel shame in any of these phases, but this is like such a deep sense of shame that it starts to numb you out. You often feel hopeless and desperate and in despair, to the point where you start to numb out and feel really low. You start to have scary thoughts. Mild to moderately depressive. You don't feel happy or excited about the things that you used to. Maybe a more clear to notice way. You withdraw from people who you really used to be close to, you take distance from friends. Or if you are around friends, you're just like not there. Like they might be talking to you, you might be talking, but the light is out. That's what my mother-in-law always said about when she struggled with this stuff. The light was just out. So, notice that in the women that you're talking to when they're postpartum, if they just, it's like, you know what? There was this one time I just needed to have a break from the baby. I was super postpartum with my second. I was in the middle of a major depressive episode and I didn't know it yet. And I went to the mall, like an outdoor mall, because it was beautiful. I was by myself and I sat on a bench and this lady like walked by and I must have looked like I was staring out because she just was like, she was a younger girl and maybe 20 or so. And she's like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I was like, not that good actually. And I started sharing because one of the things I did when I was really, really depressive is I like would not talk to people close to me, but then I would overshare with strangers. It was a stress response. And so I kind of just like she's like, "Are you okay? Do you want me to stay with you?" And that's when I was like, oh gosh, I've shared too much. But anyway, that's what I mean is like you start to withdraw. It's such a deep stress response. You start to withdraw even though you desperately need help. You start to not communicate even though what you need is to communicate. You start to avoid talking to your doctor and making the appointment even though that's what you need more than anything. And this is where letting your inner circle of people that are with you postpartum hear this episode so that they can notice if you're doing that. So if you're pregnant, send this to them. Even if you're newly postpartum, send this to your spouse, send this to your boyfriend, whoever's with you, send this to your mother-in-law. Make sure that people are going to be able to see you. And I don't try to scare you, but I just want you to be prepared and have some safeguards up because mental health is precious. It's precious and it's irreplaceable. Now you can rehabilitate it. You can come back from it. When it's gone until it's not, it's like a climbing uphill. It's so much easier to just not get that low. So that's why I have a job. That's why I exist. One of the reasons I should say. Okay. You are at this point pretty frozen in your ability to have any good executive functioning, low to no productivity. I'm not talking about like a huge checklist. I mean, you are postpartum, but the things that you'd like to be doing, you just can't even imagine doing them. It's just like, it takes all that you could do to just sit there, feed the baby and sit there some more. Foggy brain, poor food choices, or maybe just not eating. So yeah, it's getting pretty scary, right? And then phase 5, I'll go over briefly. You might be fantasizing about running away or leaving baby somewhere. You might be thinking about scary things like hurting your baby or harming yourself, or sometimes you consider acting on it. Now, there's a big difference when you have intrusive thoughts. Just because you had the thought doesn't mean you're evil and you created the thought. Your brain will just give you crazy thoughts, especially if you're sleep deprived. So get more sleep. That will help, most likely. I can't guarantee it, but most likely it will. There could be other factors though, so I can't say that for everyone. But yeah, I don't know what I was just saying. But think about scary. So you think about scary things, hurting baby, harming yourself, and sometimes you consider acting on it. You see delusions. Possibly you cannot sleep even though you need to. You have like insomnia, which is freaky, or you get very little sleep. OCD to the point of you can't function well, and that could be a new thing or an old thing. You are regularly thinking about suicide and kind of planning it or seriously considering it. And I don't like talking about that one because it is sad and hard to talk about because creepy. But at the same time, if you're there, I don't blame you for being there and you need to get help right away. So the deeper into the phases you are, like phase 4 and phase 5, the more intense and immediate support you need. Phase 1 through 3, you just get to choose how long you want to wait to get support. And I think the biggest thing that keeps a lot of really amazing women from getting support is they're telling themselves, I should be able to do it myself. Maybe you shouldn't. I'm not trying to say that to disempower you, but I like to just think, if you could do it yourself, do you think you already would have? And there's no shame in being like, well, I have been trying, and I haven't been able to. Like postpartum can be a bitch. Postpartum can be really intense. Like for many of us, it is the first time we've ever had a surgery or gone through a major physical event such as birth. So we've got this huge physical recovery that we're not used to being down and out. So we don't probably treat ourselves like we're really down and out, or it really gets to us mentally and emotionally that we're very down and out. I had a lot of sadness about not being able to be mobile after my C-section this last time. That wasn't the case for me in any of my other postpartums, which were vaginal births. There's so many things that can pile up, and you don't need to feel bad if you need some help. Welcome to the Mom Club. It's okay. Come on in, take a seat, get some help. So I have a lot of free resources at LizzieLangston.com. And you can also go to the Work With Me page and check out any other paid options as well I have different levels of support for you guys. I love you so much. I love you and honor you. There's nothing more important for me than to talk about women's mental health postpartum, because I've been in the scary of it. And just, it matters. It matters so deeply. And you guys are going to help your daughters not be butchered through this like we have all been. Okay. So let's do it for them. Do it for you. Do it for me. Love you. Okay. Talk to you next week. One more thing. This is just for the podcast listeners. I want you to know I still do have private coaching available if you're interested. I would love to coach you. And starting in January, consultations will be $97. And so now's a great time to book a consultation. So you can go to LizzieLangston.com/consult. Or if you sign up for any of the freebies or are on my email list, you will regularly see that consultation booking link. It's also right here in the show notes, and it's also in my profile on Instagram at Lizzie, that's LIZZIE.postpartum coach. But yeah, I'd love to get on the phone with you, talk about your pain points, your needs, and how I can help you. All right, talk to you soon.
Hey, Lizzie here. I've helped dozens of postpartum moms just like you to manage their postpartum anxiety and deconstruct their postpartum depression. It's really easy for me. So if you're ready to feel better, I know the way. Let's chat on the phone. Set up a time by going to LizzieLangston.com/consult. It's pretty simple, and I will be calling you soon.